Welcome to episode 2 of the Shred Till You're Dead podcast. Today, my guest is Justin from Ice Nine Kills. Alright, so do you want to start off by talking a little bit about yourself and Ice Nine Kills?
Sure. So let's see. It's 2019. I think I joined Ice Nine Kills in 2009. It's been about a decade now that I've been touring and playing in this band as the guitar player. We had a couple lineup changes, but for the most part, I was always the main guitar player of Ice Nine Kills, and I've done a lot of background vocals and screaming and stuff like that. And the vast majority of the writing and composition was on my end as well, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of hard work and proving people wrong, but we've gotten to where we are now because we didn't give up. So
you guys are one of those bands that really was persistent from the day they started. Around for a while now and really got bigger with every trick in the book and your latest album, which is great. Congrats.
Thank you. Yes, this latest album has been it was very, very challenging to put together because it was so intense, and there was a lot kind of resting on this album as well. So we decided at one point to make the last album, Every Trick in the Book, about stories. Because we released Me, Myself, and Hyde as like a bridge track between albums. To continue to give out more content, and we found that with that story and putting the characters into the story, that it really resonated well with fans and new people. So we decided to do that entire album based on literature, and it was received so well from the people that had already been following us and from new people that we couldn't ignore that something was working. So when we decided to put the Silver Scream together, before it was, titled The Silver Scream, we were thinking, well, what concepts could we do? What sort of album can we do that was similar to what we did before, but not the same exact thing? So we decided, let's go with horror movies, because horror has always been like a little connection to our band over the years. There'd be certain songs and certain albums that had little ties to, the darker side and horror movies, and the videos. We would do funny, campy things with blood and stupid stuff like that. We had a lot of fun with that, and we said, why don't we just do a whole album on movies, and then we could tie into the actual film aspect and make the release like going to the theater, and that's where the Silver Scream just came from, and it was exciting to put together. A lot of work, but really happy to see where it's gotten us so far.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So did you come up with a list of movies and then decide to write the songs, or did you pick one movie and say, we're going to write a song about this?
At first, what we were doing was trying to keep the concept concise by having a theme that spanned across the entire album, and we found that the movies was working so well. So we actually did make a list. It made somewhere between 20 and 30 movies, and the list was pretty extensive. But we started to kind of take away certain elements of that list by saying, okay, this one's kind of like that one. The duality of man, we already did that with this story. Or we got to have the classics. We got to have the Jason, the Michael Myers, the Saw, the all the different classic, Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street, and stuff like that. So we decided we have to slim down the list to continue with some sort of variety, and we got it down to about 15 songs and started picking away which ones were going to be the big ones and which ones were going to be the artistic side of what we like to do, and that's where we landed at where we're at now. There's a couple of movies we wanted to do, but we couldn't get them done either in time, or they just weren't sitting with us right, and we didn't want to release it in a way where it would be a poor reflection of our concept. So that's why a movie like Scream didn't make it in, because it's such an iconic horror film that we didn't want to release it if it didn't feel just right.
Did you go into the studio with songs written, or did you just write stuff in the studio? How'd that work?
Well, for the most part, I basically run our own studio, and I've been playing producer in our band for so long that it's not like we go to a studio and then start making an album. We together and create the music either through a couple of the members or one person, or we share ideas, and then I'll kind of compile everyone's ideas in my studio and create what I feel like is their vision, and then we correct that if it's off course, or we build upon that if it's in the right direction. And sometimes we build it so far and change our mind that we have to undo everything and make it different. But we did a lot of the writing before we went into the studio, per se. Now that so much can be done from home, like I would do the demoing process, and then the vocals maybe recorded with somebody else. I would do my own vocals in my studio, but all the other instruments I would record myself here, and then we would just send the final version of everything that's recorded off to someone to do the final mix.
Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that you were recording that much at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that the first album you guys did was recorded in Spencer's basement, right?
Yeah, that was before my time. That was The Burning. They recorded that, and it actually was intended to be a demo, and they had it mixed by somebody, and it ended up being the final product. But since then, Safe is Just a Shadow was recorded by Steve Sobchak in Syracuse. The Predator EP and The Predator Becomes the Prey was also recorded by Steve in his studio in Syracuse. And then after that, we started to experiment. Like we did some covers, and I would record everything and send it to Steve to get mixed. And then when Every Trick in the Book came around, I recorded the entire album myself, with the exception of Spencer's vocals, which he still did with Steve. And at this point, you can kind of tell that Steve has been a massive asset to this band, whether it's been writing, recording, producing, anything. He's been a huge part of the success of this band, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. So after Every Trick in the Book, which I recorded all the rest of the instrumentals, and that was the first album that we actually programmed the drums, whereas the previous stuff I recorded in Steve's studio. That was the first time we actually programmed them. I used a drum kit that Steve and I created by recording individual hits and creating samples off of the kit that we had, and I built that kit and constructed the parts out of that. And then after that, our bridge track was the first time that we recorded the drums in separate pieces. Oh no, I'm sorry. This was Me, Myself, and Hyde. Before we did Every Trick in the Book, we recorded that, played live. I would track the stuff, cymbals first, and then we did all the drums separate, and then the kick drum was third. And we were trying to experiment on what's the best way we can get complete isolation of everything without losing the realness of actually performing it ourselves. So that was an experiment that landed us with Every Trick of the Book being completely programmed, and we liked that. So we moved on to the Silver Scream, and that again was programmed with some newly developed kits by Get Good Drums, and we used amp sims and reamped with Kempers and stuff like that through the mixing process. So it's been cool to put the albums together and see the different ways that we can get it done and have it sound the way that it does. But from the original, or from the origin of where it all starts, it was in my studio recording, me recording the stuff here and then sending it off to be finalized somewhere else.
That's really cool. I didn't know that you used programmed drums on either of those albums. They sound so realistic, and that's really hard to think to achieve sometimes. So good work on that.
It is definitely something that has come a long way, but it's not as simple as just sitting down and punching in the the notes to play the drums. You still have to be able to think like a drummer, and program like a drummer, and make sure you don't have 3-handed drum parts and 5-handed parts, stuff like that. There's a lot of times where I've heard programmed drums on records, and I can hear like too many hands on the drums. I'm like, this isn't possible. So, I was able to achieve that because before I was a guitar player, I was a drummer, and tracking all the stuff prior was so familiar to me that when I'm writing the stuff, like the guitar parts and the bass parts and the drums, like, I think as if I'm the musician in each one of those roles, making sure that I'm not doing anything that's totally outlandish.
So going back to using other forms of art for your writing, do you think you're going to continue that? Spencer mentioned that there's a possibility of a sequel to the Silver Screen. Is that something you're interested in?
We've gotten that question a lot. People are really so happy with the way that the Silver Screen turned out that they want more. And I don't blame them, because we wanted to create more movies out of it. We wanted more music videos. We wanted more actual movies to be on the album. We had to stop at 13 because basically we ran out of time and we couldn't do more. But having like a second version of the album with things like, Hellraiser or Chucky, and various other movies, Cabin in the Woods, there's a lot of really great movies that we weren't able to put on. But it would be awesome to do a second version of it. I don't think that would be something that would happen right away, just because we want to keep things interesting. Maybe it's something where we make an EP out of it some other day, or we add it to a deluxe edition, or maybe it's something we do the album after the next. It could be anything, but we do recognize the interest that the public has to hear more of those things, because it's interesting, it's fun, and we would love to do it. Just a matter of logistically when it could be put together and timing.
For the horror fans listening to this, what are some of your favorite horror movies? Like you've mentioned a whole bunch of them that you haven't recorded. Is your favorite one on the album?
So, favorite horror movies. This is a question we get a lot too, and I've always been the one in the band that was the least passionate about horror movies.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, it's not that there isn't an answer to this, because there totally is. For me, I was very easily entertained by all of them. I would have this broad look at horror movies are either really cheesy, really bad, really scary, or just fun to watch. So it was never like, oh, this movie sucked, because if it sucks in the horror genre, for me, it's like, it doesn't suck. It was funny. It was funny to watch. It's like, why would somebody make something seemingly so bad on accident? Like they would purposely make it that way because it's funny, it's campy, it's part of the genre. So I guess, among my favorite horror movies, I really loved The Ring because I really liked the story. I thought it was in depth, kept me interested. I like sci-fi-ish type of stuff. So I guess you could call, there's this an older movie with Sam Neill, I think it is, and he was in this movie called, oh man, now I gotta look it up. I just watched it and I always forget the title.
No problem.
I'm thinking really hard right now. Okay, got it. So there's this movie that Sam Neill was in called Event Horizon, and it was really, really dark, really kind of twisted. And it was a sci-fi movie, but it was sci-fi horror, and it was about other dimensions, like hell being brought into our world through this lost spaceship called the Event Horizon, and it vanished and then came back suddenly, and they went on a rescue mission. It was kind of like in the realm of the Alien movies, deep space type stuff, but
Yeah.
It was, the tie to hell and the demons and the gore was really cool. I like stuff like that. And then, I get back into the classics like the Friday the 13th movies. Those movies are so bad, but they're so fun. They're so, that's just my opinion, but I find them to be really fun. I just watched all of them recently to just really capture, the character that I was being on stage for, the entire summer. But those are great. And I think my favorite of the most popular horror movies is the Saw series, just because I like the puzzles. I like the twists. That kind of stuff is really interesting to me, rather than just the straight up slash and gore. And I think another favorite, which is a new favorite, is The Babysitter. It was on Netflix, and there's just something really catchy about the way they put that movie together, and it's really funny. And I think it gave a new light to a lot of things. But as far as the sophistication of the genre, like I don't really identify with a lot of that stuff. I just like to be entertained.
How is it playing a character on stage, like having to wear the mask and all? It probably gets pretty hot some days, like on Warped Tour. Are you dying in that suit?
I get asked it all the time, and the answer, I guess, it kind of has two sides, especially because of the time frame. Like Warped Tour doing it wasn't that bad. It was okay, and people think like, oh, you're in that suit, it must be awful, but basically my entire outfit, it's just a pair of jeans and a work shirt, like a Dickies shirt. It's not like I'm wearing like a full, huge, super thick, hot, sweaty suit. I'm really just wearing regular clothes. And then my mask is, I think it's latex. It might be vinyl, but it's basically a hood that goes over my head, and then it's got an open face, and then I just put the hockey mask over it. So it can get a little sweaty under there. Not so bad. I have to kind of wipe out my eyes a little bit so I don't get sweat in my eyes, but it's not so bad because it's kind of like a wetsuit. It's everything out and then it keeps everything in. But it eventually it got tiresome. Once the next tour started, where it was an indoor tour, where it's dark venues and it's hard to see. The stages aren't as consistent. Given that Warped Tour is the same stage every day, there's new variables and new responsibilities that come along with my role in the band, and also wearing a mask that I can't rip off in the event that something needs to be fixed on stage. So that became a bit more on the miserable side, but it was okay. I got through it. And the other part of being Jason is that it is kind of fun to be the guy that walks out really slow and slowly stalks around the stage. I don't have to like headbang too hard with a mask on. I can actually play Jason, which is like an ominous, not super slow moving character, but someone who gets to kind of stand and turn my head slowly and stare at people, and it's fun. It's definitely fun to play Jason.
Yeah, it definitely adds another aspect to your show as well. It's more of like a theatrical thing as well, which
Sure.
makes it way more interesting for the audience.
I think my favorite part of being Jason was that the mask held my mouth closed, and it would stretch if I opened my mouth. But I got a beard too, so it's like my hair would be all clumped up in under my chin, and I couldn't open my mouth all the way to scream and do my vocals. Like I had to basically scream with opening my mouth like a half an inch. And if anyone out there knows what it's like to scream in front of a mic, your mouth has to open. So I screamed the entire time, like with my jaw basically closed, and it was exhausting and miserable. And it's like it's not the way that I normally sound. So I had to kind of figure out a new way to scream that still got the parts out, but also, didn't like completely restrict my abilities. So that was a big challenge at first, but I got through it. Eventually my jaw would just start hurting, and I'd just finish out the show and walk off stage and be like, ugh, I hate this thing.
You've probably played quite a few songs off the new record during your Silver Scream tour. What's your favorite to play so far?
My favorite to play so far, I think I think we played at this point somewhat around half the album. I might be miscalculating that, maybe a little more. But my favorite one to play, I think, is Thank God It's Friday. It's the only song we've ever done that's tuned lower than drop A. And this song, for guitar and bass players out there, this one's in drop G, which is a full step below that. And it's fun to play. My strings are much tighter, so I can really kind of just hammer on the guitar. The parts aren't really super hard, but they are fun to play. And there's also a lot of energy in that song. And I get to be Jason in my own song, and that one was a lot of fun to play live. Some of the other ones are a bit more challenging for different players. Sometimes, like, I'll have a hard song, but it'll be easy for somebody else. And like Pat, when he was trying to put together The Jig Is Up, like, he was saying that song's like the hardest song he's ever had to play. But for me, it was easy because my parts just happened to be easier. That one was next on the chopping block to get ready for live, but we hadn't had enough time to put that one together for that tour. I feel like that one would be my second favorite if there was one.
What are your personal music interests? What made you want to join a metalcore band?
So I started off, my sister was a big influence musically. Not that she was a musician that influenced me, but she was the one who would put music in front of me to hear. And it started with really maybe embarrassing stuff at this point. Like, she used to love Ace of Base and Aqua, that Barbie song, and listen to jock jams and all sorts of stuff. When I was a kid, I thought that stuff was cool. But then she got into cooler stuff like Bush, and I was eventually turned on to Dave Matthews Band and a lot of things that really weren't metal. But my first metal bands that I ever heard were like Spineshank and Korn and Slipknot, and Limp Bizkit. And now we would say that, oh, those really aren't metal bands per se. But back then, to me, that's what those were. And I heard a band like Rammstein, and then I started getting into like some of these like older Christian metal bands like Zayo and Extol, and a lot of exposure to stuff like Slipknot. That eventually sparked my interest in heavy music. But at the same time, I was still listening to things like Reliant K and Blink-182. So my interests were pretty wide, between metal music and stuff like Dave Matthews Band and pop punk and stuff like that. So my interest changed over the years, but I found this band called Thrice on Punk Rock Vids, I think it was, or one of those old punk rock sites. I think it was Punk Rock Videos, where they would post concerts and stuff. And that's the first time I found Thrice, and that band just kind of captivated me, and I just wanted to play all their music. So I started playing everything I could on guitar. I had a friend who loved them as well, and he played everything on drums, and then we started playing the songs together, and it's just sort of a click, like, why don't you start a band and write your own music and stuff. So we were just, we'd write riffs, and we'd write different songs that sometimes would last like 8 minutes long. We didn't know anything about anything, but we just wanted to play and have fun, and we didn't want it to ever end. So we started a band and eventually started playing shows, and then I met some people that were in another band, and I joined their band eventually. It was called Remember Tomorrow. This is, I'm kind of fast forwarding really quickly here through many years, but I joined their band in 2008, maybe 2007. They knew Ice Nine Kills from playing shows. And I went on my first little tour in a minivan. We crashed it. We came home. We played more shows. I met Ice Nine Kills shortly after that. I met Spencer and Jeremy and Hobie, and I think they had Dave. No, Dave came later, but they had Grant playing drums, and it was a lot of fun. We met them, played some shows with them, and eventually, after Remember Tomorrow had set off on had put together the plan to go on Warped Tour and sell CDs. Like, we weren't actually asked to be there. We were just going to go sell CDs in the line and try to, gain as much exposure with that as possible. Ice Nine Kills was at a point where Spencer was the only member that was still in the band. he asked us if we wanted to basically take the place of everyone in the band, and we said yes, because they were basically 2 years ahead of us. They had already done the thing we were about to go do, which was going to be grueling and miserable. We're like, absolutely, let's do this. We like your music. You like ours. Let's fuse and let's play something awesome. So we became the new Ice Nine Kills. We learned all their stuff from The Burning, and then we started creating more to record the next record that was supposed to come out on Ferret Music. And then we started to basically write Safe Is Just a Shadow, and it took us a while because we changed the plans a lot, and we went to a couple different people to work on it. But eventually we came back to Syracuse and worked on it with Steve, who had been the guy that Remember Tomorrow used for everything. And that's how our relationship with Steve started, and that's how Safe Is Just a Shadow came about. And, the rest is history from there. But, to short answer you, I guess what got me into metalcore was when I first picked up a guitar and started playing it and realized how fun it was. I mean, I hasn't picked up a guitar in the metalcore genre and played like an Avenged Sevenfold riff and been like, this isn't fun. Like, probably nobody, because it was amazing. And everyone was like, let's play this song, let's be like this band, and let's just play riffs. So that's really where it started for me.
When did you start playing music? Like, at what age?
Okay, so going back to childhood, my first instrument that I actually played was piano. My mother wanted me to play piano because music was in her family. And there's a lot to be learned from piano, is, patience and discipline and structure of, learning how to properly play the instrument and read music. That's where I first started. And I didn't really stick with it forever. I played it when I was young, and it gave me the idea of rhythm and notation. But eventually I fell away from that, and I just wanted to hit things. So I started playing drums. When I was a little kid, I used to pull all the pots and pans out of the cabinet, lay them on the floor, and just bang on them with the wooden spoons. And my mom knew that I was going to be a drummer at some point because her brother was a drummer, and it just must have trickled down through the family. And I started playing drums in like 5th grade. Played drums in, I think, 6th or 7th grade. Always played in school band, percussion, stuff like that. And then I got to 8th grade and I saw someone playing a guitar. I was like, that's cool. And they started playing a song that I knew, like something I heard on the radio, or like a Blink-182 song or something. And I was like, that's crazy. How are you doing that? Like, I was just fascinated by the idea that someone could play a song that I knew. And I was like, I got to learn how to do this. So my mom got me a cheap little guitar from the music store, and I learned how to play like 2 things, and I played them over and over and over and over and over again. And I was like, this is fun. I'm having so much fun doing this by myself, playing guitar. One day my sister was like, do you play anything else? Like, stop playing that same thing over and over again. And that's basically when I was like, yeah, I should learn other stuff. So then I started learning other bands' music and found Thrice eventually, and was like, I gotta just play this stuff. This is so fun. And started a band. So when I really started playing serious instruments was probably, in 7th, 8th grade. That's when I really got into it and decided I wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you stuck to it.
Yeah.
I mean, persistence is key for being a musician.
I remember sitting down once with my mom, and we had like the college talk, and I was like, I'm not gonna go to college, Mom. I don't want to go to college. Like, I want to play music. And I don't remember what exactly it was, but it got to an emotional level. I think I might have been in trouble for something, or we had argued about something. And I said, Mom, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be in a band, and I'm gonna make music, and I'm gonna play shows. I'm gonna do this for a living. Like, I was a kid. I was, I don't know, 11th grade, maybe 10th grade. But I was so determined in such a naive way. Like, I had no idea what it was going to take, but I believed in it so hard. I was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to happen, Mom. And I don't want to go to college. But she eventually was like, okay, well, here's a college where you could play music at school and you can learn about how to record music and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's cool. So I ended up going to a community college near me that specialized in music recording technology. And I had an amazing time. I was in the studio constantly. They had state-of-the-art equipment. And that's where I got my first exposure to real-life recording and what it was like to be, in the producer chair making music.
So was your mother pretty supportive of you? Like, obviously, she wanted you to go to college and get a degree. But...
Absolutely. My parents both were really supportive. And they, my dad he'd be tough on me just because he grew up in a world where it's like, you got to work to make money. And if you want to be successful, you got to learn a trade. Music wasn't a big thing in his side of the family, but working hard was. And that's where I learned that. And that actually made a huge difference that I couldn't even explain. That made a huge difference, structuring me in a way that helped me with I wanted to be a musician, and I wasn't just going to sit around and let it come to me. And I never thought it would. I had to work hard at it. So I learned all my work ethic and my real dedication to passion and stuff like that from my father. And my mother was always very supportive musically because she was a musician and her whole family were musicians. So yeah, I had very supportive parents. They weren't like the kind of parents that were like, oh, you have a dream or a goal. Here's a bunch of money. Just go figure it out and come home for dinner. They were very, very regimented in helping me accomplish things, but they also kept me in line. So like if I screwed up in school, they would take my guitar from me. If I got in trouble or if I got bad grades, they'd take away my ability to go have band practice. And I would sneak out periodically. I think I told them one time I was going out to dinner with my friends. Like, what kind of 10th grader goes out to dinner with their friends at 6:00? No, I wasn't going out to dinner. I was going to band practice with my cymbals in my backpack, like covered in clothing. But I think I told them that story and they laughed about it eventually. But they kept me in line and kept me on course for success, whatever that may be, by teaching me that there's consequences for your actions. You have to be dedicated to what you want, and it's not just going to happen. You have to work for it. Whatever the thing is that you want in your life, you have to work for it, and you can't expect it to be handed to you. They definitely didn't hand me anything. They made me work for everything, and I, being a 32-year-old man now, I agree with everything they did, and I'm happy that they did it that way.
Yeah. Would you recommend anything in particular for someone who is in a similar position where they want to be a professional musician, other than like hard work? What's like a specific piece of advice that you can give to someone? So if you want to say you want to be a musician, you can't just expect that everything is going to fall in your lap. One, you have to be good at it. You have to be talented. You have to understand that music is a form of entertainment, and people want to be entertained. In other words, you can't suck at your instrument. You have to be good at it. You have to understand how to play it. You have to understand what people want to hear, and you have to figure out what you're good at. You do what you're good at. And some people might say, well, it's all about yourself and what you get out of it. Yeah, it is if it's a hobby. But if you want to be a professional musician, you have to entertain people. That's just how it works. And people aren't going to pay you to play stuff that only you like. They're going to pay you because they want to be entertained. You have to give them what they want. And of course, it's not that black and white. There's a middle ground of being good at something that you enjoy, that other people enjoy as well. But that's part of the exploration that you have in your musical journeys to find that kind of stuff out. But for young people, you have plenty of time. Just because you're 14 or 15 or even 16 and you started a band with your friends, and just because you're not signed or you haven't played shows on the other side of the country or you don't have enough Facebook likes doesn't mean that you don't have a shot.
You know, there's more to it than that. You have to find ways to network with people, and there's ways to talk to people properly, and having the heart to continue to press on when someone says, you know what, I don't like that song. You know, there's more to it than just waiting for everything to happen. You could have a great product and go nowhere with it. You know, if you're not in the right place, talking to the right people, taking those risks and taking those chances and investing money. Like, being in a band isn't cheap. You have to have money to do it. That means you have to work hard. You have to work 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs. Maybe you have to make sacrifices that allow you to focus on your passion. You know, I mean, I know a lot of bands that they have cool songs or the cool parts, or that they're on track to be something cool musically, but they spend most of their time playing Call of Duty or playing Pokemon Go on their phones or whatever people are doing. They like walking around the streets doing weird stuff with like video games. Like, focus. You know, you're 16, 17, 18 years old. If you want this so bad, you have to work for it. You can't waste your time. Instead of sitting around, you know, playing video games with your friends, eating pizza, take that 3 or 4 hours and learn how to market on your Facebook. Figure out how to create videos on how you're creating your products. Make videos of yourself playing your instrument so other people can see you. Nowadays, it's all about content. And if you're just on the other end, not sharing new content, and you're just playing games or watching movies or riding bikes, I don't know, like whatever people are doing, that's other than focusing on their passions, it's not going to happen for you. So my advice is, if you want something hard enough, you have to work. You have to work. You can't wait for it to come to you. There's always something that needs to be done, always something that can be done. And eventually the work that you put in will reflect positive results.
Absolutely. That's a great note to leave it on, but is there anything else you want to add? Do you want to give yourself a plug or anything before we end this podcast?
Sure. You know, I'm really happy you asked me to be part of it. I think these types of things are really great to help new people either hear different perspectives on music or businesses. And, you know, since I started my journey to be a musician, like I've reached my goal. When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was play in a band, play shows, and have fun. Never did I think at any point I was like, I have to get to Warped Tour. I have to get to Europe. I have to tour the country. I have to do this and that. I have to have this many albums on iTunes and Spotify. Like, for me, all I wanted to do was play and have fun and have that be my daily activity. And I reached that years ago. You know, the struggles came after trying to get to the next level and the next level. And, you know, it does not ever end. You do have to continue on to build if you want to continue to be more and more successful. But that's something that I set out to do that evolved into something bigger. And after being in it for 10 years, I found that there's even more outside of the bounds of what I set out to do. So since then, I've developed my own skills of producing music. You know, I work with younger bands. I work with more established bands. Currently, I have bands from Rochester where I live, where they want to make music as well. They want to create EPs and full lengths. Maybe they're fans of the band, or they're just friends of mine from years of playing shows. I'm working with other artists like Motionless in White and Lorna Shore and various different established artists that have been in the game for quite a while. And I found that there's a new passion for creation that I actually have had this whole time. I just love creating music. And, you know, find what you're good at, find what you're passionate at, and do what you're good at, so that when you have the time, when you're done doing your job, whether you really love it or you're okay with it, do it well, so that when you have that free time of your own, you can afford the time and the money to do the things that you really love. You know?
Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.